Imagine the United States during the darkest days of the Second World War. Enemy submarines move through the Atlantic. German agents operate in foreign capitals. Japanese codes hide plans that could decide the fate of millions. Secret armies prepare to strike behind enemy lines. But there is one problem. The CIA does not exist. No vast headquarters. No director of Central Intelligence as we know the position today. No single American agency controlling spies around the world. The CIA will not officially be created until 1947. So who was stealing enemy secrets before then? Who was breaking codes? Who was recruiting agents? Who was sending Americans behind enemy lines with false identities, hidden weapons, and orders that could never be acknowledged? The answer is more surprising than one organization. Because before the CIA, America's intelligence system was a battlefield of its own. The Army had spies. The Navy had spies. The State Department collected secrets through diplomats. The FBI operated beyond America's borders. Private detectives joined military operations. Codebreakers listened to messages no one else could understand. And during World War II, a secret organization led by one extraordinary man built the closest thing America had ever seen to a global spy service. Its name was the Office of Strategic Services, the OSS. But even the OSS was not the beginning. America's hidden war started long before 1947. In fact, it started before the United States officially existed. And one of America's earliest spy masters was George Washington. This is the secret history of American espionage before the CIA, a history of invisible ink, coded letters, secret chambers, double agents, bureaucratic wars, brilliant victories, and catastrophic failures. And at the center of it is a mystery. If America had been spying for generations, why did it wait until 1947 to create the CIA? The answer begins in 1776. The American Revolution was not only fought with muskets and cannons, it was fought with information. General George Washington understood something many commanders learned too late. An army could survive losing a battle. It might not survive being surprised. Washington needed to know where the British were moving, how many soldiers they had, and when they planned to attack. But he had no professional intelligence service. There was no training academy for spies, no established system for protecting secret sources, no permanent organization collecting information across the colonies. Washington had to build one while fighting a war. His first attempts were dangerous, improvised, and sometimes tragic. One of the most famous early American intelligence officers was Nathan Hale. In September 1776, Hale entered British-controlled New York disguised as a schoolteacher. His mission was to collect information about British positions. He was captured. The British found evidence connecting him to espionage, and he was executed. Hale became a symbol of sacrifice, but his death also exposed a brutal reality. Patriotism alone did not make someone an effective spy. Espionage required planning, secure communication, believable cover stories, and escape routes. Washington needed something more sophisticated. He needed a network, and that network would be built in a place filled with British soldiers, loyalists, merchants, sailors, rumors, and danger. New York. In 1778, Major Benjamin Talmadge helped organize the Culper Spy Ring. The ring operated mainly around New York City, Long Island, and Connecticut. Its members did not walk around calling themselves spies. They used code names. Washington was identified in coded correspondence as Agent 711. Benjamin Talmadge was John Bolton. Abraham Woodhull, a central member of the network, used the name Samuel Culper. Robert Townsend, who gathered information inside British-controlled New York, was known as Samuel Culper, Jr. The network used couriers, coded messages, secret routes, and invisible ink. Information could travel from New York City to Long Island, across Long Island Sound, through Connecticut, and eventually to Washington's headquarters. Every step carried the risk of arrest. Every messenger could be followed. Every letter could become a death sentence. The Culper Ring reported on British military activity and helped warn Washington about possible threats. It also became involved in one of the most shocking espionage stories of the Revolution, the betrayal of Benedict Arnold. Arnold had once been celebrated as an American hero. But bitterness, money problems, wounded pride, and ambition pushed him toward treason. He secretly communicated with British Major John Andre and planned to surrender the American fortress at West Point. If the plan succeeded, the British could gain control of a strategic position on the Hudson River. The consequences might have been devastating. But Andre was captured carrying documents connected to the plot. Arnold escaped to the British. Andre was executed. The betrayal proved that espionage was not simply about learning the enemy's plans. It was also about discovering danger inside your own ranks. This was counterintelligence. The search for spies, traitors, and double agents. America was learning the rules of the secret world. But after independence, something strange happened. The country did not create a permanent national intelligence service. The new United States had just escaped a powerful empire. Its leaders were deeply suspicious of centralized authority. A permanent secret service sounded dangerous. Who would control it? Who would watch it? Could a president use spies against political opponents? Could secret operations threaten the liberties the revolution had supposedly protected? These questions did not disappear. They would follow American intelligence for the next 2 centuries. For much of the 19th century, the United States collected intelligence only when a crisis demanded it. Diplomats reported political developments. Military officers observed foreign armies. Naval officers visited ports and studied ships. Government officials sometimes hired agents for special missions. But there was no CIA-like organization coordinating everything. The system was temporary, personal, fragmented, and when a war ended, intelligence networks often disappeared with it. Then came the American Civil War, and suddenly, information became a weapon that could determine whether the nation survived. When the Civil War began in 1861, both the Union and the Confederacy urgently needed intelligence. They needed to know enemy troop strength, supply routes, railway movements, fortifications, and battle plans. But neither side entered the war with a modern, unified intelligence service. Once again, spies had to be recruited and networks had to be built during the conflict. For the Union, one of the most famous early figures was Allan Pinkerton. Pinkerton was a private detective. His agency had experience tracking criminals, infiltrating groups, and gathering information. He became connected to General George B. McClellan and organized intelligence operations for him. Pinkerton and his operatives interviewed prisoners, questioned deserters, studied reports, and sent agents into Confederate territory. Pinkerton himself sometimes worked under the name Major E.J. Allen. But there was a serious problem. His estimates of Confederate troop strength were often too high. McClellan was already a cautious commander. Intelligence suggesting enormous enemy forces gave him another reason to delay. This reveals one of the most important lessons in espionage. Collecting information is not enough. The information must be analyzed correctly. A spy can report what he saw. A prisoner can repeat what he heard. A scout can estimate the size of a camp. But if analysts misunderstand the evidence, intelligence can create fear instead of clarity. Later in the war, the Union developed a more effective organization, the Bureau of Military Information. Established in 1863 under Colonel George H. Sharp, the Bureau collected information from scouts, captured documents, prisoners, deserters, refugees, newspapers, and intercepted communications. Instead of relying on a single dramatic source, it combined many small pieces: a railway schedule, a unit insignia, a prisoner's statement, a newspaper report, the location of supply wagons. Individually, these details might appear meaningless. Together, they could reveal the movement of an entire army. That method sounds familiar because modern intelligence agencies still depend on the same basic principle. The truth is often hidden inside a pattern. The Confederacy also conducted espionage. Confederate agents operated in Washington and other Union-controlled areas. Secret networks moved messages and supplies. Some agents attempted sabotage. Others gathered political or military information. Women played major roles on both sides. Elizabeth Van Lew, a wealthy resident of Richmond, organized an important Union intelligence network inside the Confederate capital. Her agents gathered information from military facilities and government circles. Mary Bowser, a formerly enslaved woman associated with Van Loo's network, reportedly gained access to the Confederate White House and observed sensitive information. Their work carried extraordinary danger. If discovered, they could have faced imprisonment or death. Meanwhile, Confederate sympathizer Rose O'Neal Greenhow used social connections in Washington to obtain information for the South. The Civil War proved that intelligence could no longer be treated as an occasional experiment. Modern warfare was becoming larger, faster, and more dependent on communication. But after the war, America again refused to build one permanent central spy service. Then technology changed the game. By the late 19th century, the United States was becoming an industrial power. Its interests were expanding overseas. Foreign navies were building new warships. European armies were developing new weapons and strategies. Telegraph cables connected governments across continents. Secrets could move faster than ever before. The Navy responded first. In 1882, the Office of Naval Intelligence was established. Its officers gathered information about foreign fleets, ports, ship designs, weapons, and naval technology. 3 years later, the Army created the Military Intelligence Division. These organizations marked an important change. Intelligence was becoming a permanent military profession. American officers could serve abroad, study foreign forces, examine maps, observe military exercises, and report what they learned. But the system remained divided. The Navy protected naval interests. The Army concentrated on armies and land warfare. Diplomats reported to the State Department. Law enforcement agencies handled different threats. No one organization saw the entire picture. And soon, a new type of spy would become just as important as the person hiding behind enemy lines, the codebreaker. During the First World War, governments transmitted enormous amounts of information by radio and telegraph, but messages traveling through wires or air could be intercepted. The solution was encryption. Turn the message into meaningless groups of letters or numbers. Only someone with the correct key could read it. At least, that was the theory. The United States expanded its code-breaking capabilities during the war. One important organization was MI8, the Army's Cipher Bureau, led by Herbert O. Yardley. Yardley was fascinated by codes. He understood that human beings often made mistakes when creating or using them. They repeated patterns. They chose predictable words. They reused keys. They became careless. A code might look like random chaos. To a trained cryptanalyst, it could contain a hidden structure. After the First World War, Yardley became associated with a secret code-breaking organization commonly known as the American Black Chamber. Officially operating under the State Department and the Army, it targeted foreign diplomatic communications. Its greatest success came during negotiations surrounding the Washington Naval Conference of 1921 and 1922. American codebreakers gained access to Japanese diplomatic communications. This gave American negotiators insight into Japan's negotiating position. Think about that for a moment. The officials sitting across the table believed their private instructions were secret, but the Americans could see behind the performance. They knew where pressure might work. They knew what the other side feared. This was intelligence without a masked agent, a hidden pistol, or a midnight escape. A room of people studying symbols could influence global power. But in 1929, the Black Chamber was closed. The decision has often been associated with Secretary of State Henry Stimson and the famous statement that gentlemen do not read each other's mail. Whether treated as a literal policy or a symbol of the period, the attitude exposed a dangerous belief that espionage could be switched off when it felt morally uncomfortable. Other nations did not switch it off, and America did not abandon codebreaking completely. Inside the Army's Signals Intelligence Service, William Friedman and his team continued the work. Friedman became one of the greatest cryptologists in American history. His codebreakers would later attack sophisticated foreign systems, including Japan's Purple diplomatic cipher machine. But even successful codebreaking created another question. What happens when one department holds a secret that another department desperately needs? America was approaching the most destructive war in history. Its intelligence services had valuable pieces of the puzzle, but no one possessed the entire picture. By the 1930s, the Federal Bureau of Investigation had become a powerful national law enforcement agency under J. Edgar Hoover. The FBI's primary role was domestic. It investigated federal crimes, sabotage, espionage, and threats inside the United States. But as war approached, the Bureau's reach expanded. President Franklin D. Roosevelt assigned the FBI responsibility for intelligence work in much of the Western Hemisphere, especially Latin America. This led to the creation of the Special Intelligence Service. The SIS sent agents into Latin American countries to identify Axis espionage networks, monitor propaganda, and investigate possible sabotage. Agents operated under official and unofficial cover. Some posed as businessmen or took positions that allowed them to move through commercial and political circles. They tracked German agents, they studied communications, they developed informants, they worked with local authorities. The FBI was no longer simply catching criminals inside American cities. It was conducting foreign intelligence operations. But the FBI was only one part of the machine. The Army had military intelligence, the Navy had naval intelligence, the State Department had diplomats. Codebreakers intercepted secret messages, and President Roosevelt often used personal contacts and unofficial channels. America had intelligence. What it did not have was unity. Then one man entered the story, a decorated soldier, a lawyer, a traveler, a man with powerful connections and an appetite for danger. William J. Donovan. William Joseph Donovan had received the Medal of Honor for his service during the First World War. His courage earned him the nickname Wild Bill, although he reportedly did not care for it. Donovan traveled through Europe before America entered the Second World War. He observed the war, met British officials, and studied the intelligence system Britain had developed through generations of imperial conflict. Britain had established organizations for foreign intelligence, domestic security, codebreaking, deception, and special operations. The United States had no equivalent central structure. Donovan believed America needed an organization that could combine information from many sources and conduct unconventional warfare. He found support from President Roosevelt. In July 1941, Roosevelt created the Office of the Coordinator of Information. Donovan became its leader. The timing is critical. This happened months before the attack on Pearl Harbor. America had not yet formally entered the war, but Roosevelt understood that the country needed better access to the hidden conflict already spreading across the world. The Coordinator of Information gathered and analyzed intelligence while also working in propaganda and psychological warfare. But its mission was broad, its authority was unclear, and established departments guarded their territory. The Army did not want an outsider interfering with military intelligence. The Navy protected its information. The FBI resisted threats to its jurisdiction. The State Department distrusted secret operators who might damage diplomacy. This was not simply a fight against foreign enemies. It was a fight inside Washington. Who controlled the spies? Who received the reports? Who decided which secrets reached the president? Then, on December 7, 1941, Japanese aircraft attacked Pearl Harbor. The attack killed thousands and pulled the United States into the Second World War. It also became one of the most powerful symbols of intelligence failure in American history. The truth was not that America knew nothing. American agencies possessed warning signs. They intercepted Japanese communications. They understood that war was increasingly likely. Military commanders received alerts. But information was scattered across organizations. Some messages were delayed. Some clues were misunderstood. Some warnings were too general. Some important intelligence did not reach the right person in time. The failure was not just about missing a single secret document labeled "Pearl Harbor will be attacked." It was about fragmentation. Different agencies held different pieces. No central authority successfully assembled them into one clear, actionable warning. That is the nightmare intelligence organizations are created to prevent. Not complete blindness, something more painful. Seeing parts of the threat, but failing to recognize the final picture. After Pearl Harbor, the United States needed more than reports. It needed an organization capable of fighting a global secret war. In June 1942, the Office of the Coordinator of Information was reorganized. Its propaganda functions were separated. The remaining organization became the Office of Strategic Services. The OSS, America's first major centralized foreign intelligence and special operations organization, had arrived. But it was not yet the CIA, and the OSS was about to enter a world where normal rules did not apply. The OSS recruited an astonishing range of people: soldiers, lawyers, historians, economists, linguists, journalists, business executives, filmmakers, adventurers, refugees who understood occupied Europe, people who spoke rare languages, people who could enter a room and be forgotten, people who could parachute into enemy territory and survive. The OSS did not want only conventional soldiers, it wanted unusual minds. Its research and analysis branch brought together scholars who studied enemy economies, transportation networks, political systems, industrial capacity, maps, and morale. This was intelligence created from documents, statistics, newspapers, reports, and careful reasoning. Not every spy carried a gun. Some carried pencils. But another side of the OSS prepared for direct action. Agents learned how to use explosives, how to operate radios, how to forge documents, how to organize resistance groups, how to follow someone without being noticed, how to detect surveillance, how to kill silently, how to survive interrogation, how to destroy a bridge, disable a train, or sabotage a factory. The OSS developed strange weapons and concealment devices, explosives disguised as ordinary objects, miniature cameras, hidden compartments, silent pistols, false documents, special radios. Some ideas were ingenious, others were bizarre, but experimentation was part of the mission. The organization's Special Operations Branch conducted sabotage and supported resistance movements. Its Secret Intelligence Branch recruited agents and collected information. The X2 branch focused on counter-espionage, working closely with British intelligence and studying enemy spy networks. Operational groups carried out missions with guerrilla forces. Morale operations spread rumors, forged documents, and used psychological warfare to weaken enemy confidence. This was not one kind of espionage. It was an entire secret battlefield. Yet the OSS never controlled all American intelligence. The military services still maintained their own operations. The FBI retained major responsibilities in the Western Hemisphere. General Douglas MacArthur restricted OSS activity in his Southwest Pacific Command. The Navy and Army protected sensitive information. Even during a global war, American intelligence remained divided. But the OSS had something its predecessors lacked: global ambition. Before the Allied invasion of Normandy, small teams entered occupied Europe. Among the most famous were the Jedburgh teams. These teams usually included specially trained personnel from Allied nations. They parachuted into occupied territory, connected with resistance forces, supplied weapons, coordinated sabotage, and communicated with Allied headquarters. Imagine the moment. The aircraft door opens. Below is darkness. Somewhere beneath the clouds are German patrols, informers, anti-aircraft units, and resistance fighters who may or may not be waiting at the correct location. The agent jumps. If the landing goes wrong, the mission may end before it begins. If the radio is captured, the enemy may send false messages. If one person talks under torture, an entire network can disappear. These operations helped resistance groups interfere with German transportation and communications. Railway lines could be cut, bridges damaged, military movements reported, enemy forces delayed. But secret war was never clean. Resistance groups had rival political goals. Weapons sent to defeat Germany might later be used in post-war conflicts. A trusted contact could be an enemy informer. A successful act of sabotage could lead to brutal retaliation against civilians. Every mission carried moral as well as military consequences. The OSS also operated in Italy, the Balkans, and other regions. Agents worked with local groups whose ideologies and ambitions did not always match American interests. Today's ally could become tomorrow's enemy. That is one of espionage's oldest traps. Intelligence services rarely choose between perfect options. They choose between uncertainty, danger, and worse danger. And Europe was only one theater. In Asia, the OSS entered jungles, mountains, and occupied territories where survival itself became an operation. In Burma, OSS Detachment 101 worked with local groups, including Kachin fighters, against Japanese forces. They gathered intelligence, rescued downed Allied airmen, guided aircraft, disrupted enemy activity, and supported guerrilla warfare. Local knowledge was essential. Maps could not show every trail. Official reports could not identify every village leader. Foreign agents needed people who understood the land, the languages, the weather, and the enemy's movements. This reveals a truth often hidden by spy stories. Intelligence rarely comes from one heroic outsider. It depends on networks, translators, radio operators, couriers, guides, local fighters, informants, families who provide food or shelter, people whose names may never appear in official histories. Some took enormous risks without receiving the recognition given to senior American officers. In China, the OSS worked in a complicated political environment involving Chinese nationalist forces, communist forces, regional power structures, and competing Allied interests. In French Indochina, OSS personnel made contact with Vietnamese forces led by Ho Chi Minh against the Japanese. That detail becomes striking when viewed from the future. Only 2 decades later, the United States would be deeply involved in war in Vietnam. A wartime contact against Japan would exist in a completely different political world after 1945. Here is the pattern. Secret alliances are temporary. History is not. Among the most remarkable OSS officers was Virginia Hall. Before joining the OSS, Hall had worked with British Special Operations. She had lost part of one leg in a hunting accident and used a prosthetic limb. The Germans knew her as a dangerous Allied agent. The Gestapo searched for her, but Hall returned to occupied France. Disguised as an elderly peasant woman, she traveled through rural areas, organized resistance networks, coordinated supplies, reported German movements, and supported sabotage. Every checkpoint was a threat. Every conversation could expose her accent. Every radio transmission risked detection. The enemy considered her one of the most dangerous Allied agents in France. Her story destroys the image of espionage as an exclusively male world. Women served as agents, analysts, cryptographers, couriers, radio operators, map specialists, and support personnel. They were often underestimated. That could be an insult. It could also become operational cover. But behind every celebrated success were missions that failed. Agents were captured. Networks were destroyed. Radios became traps. False information traveled in both directions. Some people entered occupied territory and never returned. Espionage looks glamorous only when the fear is removed from the story. In reality, a secret agent often lived with one unbearable question. Has the enemy already discovered me? The Allies did not only try to discover enemy plans, they tried to control what the enemy believed. Before D-Day, the Allies created an enormous deception campaign designed to convince Germany that the main invasion might strike somewhere other than Normandy, especially the Pas-de-Calais. False radio traffic suggested the existence of military formations. Inflatable equipment and controlled leaks strengthened the illusion. Double agents passed carefully constructed information. General George Patton, whom the Germans considered a leading Allied commander, was connected to a fictional force. The objective was not merely to hide the truth, it was to give the enemy a believable alternative. That is the art of deception. A lie works best when it confirms what the target already suspects. Counterintelligence officers also faced an even darker challenge. Was an agent truly loyal? Had the enemy captured and turned that person? Was the message genuine? Was the radio operator secretly transmitting under guard? Sometimes a tiny change in transmission style could suggest danger, a missing security signal, a repeated error, an unusual phrase. One detail could mean the difference between sending help and walking into an ambush. The secret war depended on doubt, and doubt does not disappear when the shooting stops. In 1945, Nazi Germany surrendered. Japan followed after the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki and the Soviet entry into the war against Japan. The Second World War was over. The OSS had created global networks, trained agents, developed intelligence techniques, supported resistance movements, and built a large analytical capability. It appeared to be the foundation of a permanent American intelligence service. Then President Harry Truman dissolved it. Why? The OSS was controversial. Some officials considered it disorganized. Others feared it could become an American secret police. Military leaders did not want it controlling their intelligence. The FBI did not want a rival. The State Department questioned whether covert operations could damage diplomacy. The war was over, and many Americans wanted wartime agencies dismantled. In September 1945, the OSS ceased to exist. Its research and analysis functions moved to the State Department. Some operational elements survived inside the War Department as the Strategic Services Unit. America had spent years building a global spy service. Then it broke the organization apart. It looked like history was repeating itself. The revolution ended, and intelligence networks faded. The Civil War ended, and temporary organizations disappeared. The First World War ended, and capabilities were reduced. Now the Second World War had ended, and the OSS was gone. But this time, the world had changed too much to return to normal. The Soviet Union was expanding its influence. Europe was shattered. Nuclear weapons had transformed warfare. Communist movements were growing. Former allies were becoming rivals. The United States could not wait for another attack before rebuilding its intelligence system. And the surviving pieces of the OSS did not simply vanish. They waited. Here is the unexpected truth. The CIA was not created out of nothing in 1947. It was assembled from generations of American experience, from Washington's coded spy networks, from Civil War scouts and analysts, from Army and Navy intelligence offices, from diplomatic reporting, from the FBI's foreign operations, from codebreakers inside secret rooms, from the coordinator of information, and most directly from the surviving personnel, methods, and ideas of the OSS. In January 1946, President Truman established the Central Intelligence Group. It operated under a new National Intelligence Authority. Rear Admiral Sidney Sowers became the first director of Central Intelligence. The Central Intelligence Group was an important bridge. It attempted to coordinate intelligence across the government, but it did not yet possess the permanent legal foundation of the future CIA. That came with the National Security Act of 1947. The act reorganized America's national security structure. It created the National Security Council. It established an independent Air Force, and it created the Central Intelligence Agency. President Truman signed the act on July 26, 1947. Its major provisions took effect on September 18th. The CIA now had a permanent place inside the American government, but even then it did not replace every other intelligence organization. The Army, Navy, Air Force, FBI, State Department, and code-breaking organizations continued to play major roles. The CIA became central. It did not become alone. And this completely changes the original question. Who was spying for America before the CIA? There was never only one answer. America was spying through soldiers, sailors, diplomats, police agents, scholars, codebreakers, private detectives, resistance fighters, and secret operatives. The problem was not the absence of intelligence. The problem was the absence of coordination. The year 1947 mattered because the United States finally accepted a difficult reality. Intelligence could not remain only a temporary weapon of war. It had to continue during peace. That was a major shift. A democracy suspicious of secret power was creating a permanent civilian intelligence agency. The decision promised protection. It also created danger. A secret agency could discover foreign threats. It could warn presidents. It could recruit spies inside hostile governments. It could conduct covert operations without sending conventional armies. But secrecy could also hide mistakes. It could protect abuses. It could allow operations to continue without public knowledge. The same secrecy that protects an agent can prevent accountability. That tension was present at the CIA's birth. It remains present today. The agency emerged from a fear of surprise, especially after Pearl Harbor. But no organization can guarantee perfect warning. Intelligence is not prophecy. Agencies work with incomplete evidence, deliberate deception, human weakness, and political pressure. A government may collect the correct information and still misunderstand it. An analyst may identify a threat and still be ignored. A spy may risk everything to deliver a secret that arrives too late. The creation of the CIA did not solve uncertainty. It created a permanent institution designed to fight it. Long before the CIA, America already lived in the world of spies. George Washington used code names and invisible ink. Civil War agents crossed enemy lines, while analysts searched for patterns. Army and Navy officers studied foreign military power. The Black Chamber opened diplomatic secrets. The FBI hunted Axis networks across the Western Hemisphere. Codebreakers attacked machines built to make messages unreadable, and the OSS sent agents into occupied territory, where one mistake could end an entire network. The CIA did not begin American espionage. It inherited it. It inherited the courage, the creativity, the rivalries, the failures, and the unanswered questions. How much secrecy can a democracy tolerate? Who watches those who operate in the shadows? When does intelligence protect freedom, and when does it threaten it? Before 1947, America had spies everywhere. What it did not have was one permanent organization standing at the center of the secret world. Pearl Harbor revealed the cost of disconnected information. World War II proved the power of organized espionage. The Cold War made permanent intelligence unavoidable. And so, from the remains of wartime agencies and centuries of hidden experience, the CIA was born, not as the beginning of America's secret history, but as the moment that history stopped disappearing after every war. The CIA began in 1947. American espionage began with the nation itself, and from the first coded letter to the most advanced intelligence operation, one truth has never changed. The battles the public can see are often shaped by secrets it never will.